Now, I know the problem with modern technology for some people is it's actually making the world worse. Like in the old days, to know what Kassad thought about Counter-Strike, you'd have to either live in the Balkan region and attend a LAN or know what his fake account on HLTV.org was. But in the modern day, because of technology, you can have blasted into a device in your pocket at all times the wildest thoughts of Kassad about Counter-Strike. And that can obviously, to some people, get under their collar a little bit, you know, it can be a bit irritating. He comes in too hot with the hot takes, doesn't he? Sometimes you think, Kassad, just give it like 20 minutes, mate, then give your opinion. Then it, you know, won't be quite so overbearing. What's the thing? You probably know about the freeze pipe. Well, they actually have some new technology here. They have this one, the blunt tip. It's actually a glycerin blunt tip, which you put in just like the free chamber in the freeze pipe. You put it in the freezer section. This one only needs 20 minutes. So you can use it with a blunt. Works with any type of blunt or joint. They can all fit in there. It's compatible with vape pens if you've got one of those little things. And also, as I say, it only takes 20 minutes, not an hour like the normal one. But of course, we also do appreciate the full-size freeze pipe from thefreezepipe.com where you put the glycerin chamber in for an hour and then it cools all the smoke by 200 degrees. Just makes your cannabis smoking experience into a cannabis smoking experience. So if you do enjoy cooler takes from Kassad that aren't too edgy and don't make you all upset about your fake Danish in-game leader dad substitute surrogate, then use the code LFN for 10% off your order at thefreezepipe.com. Right, there you go. There we go. We can start the episode now. By the way, spoiler, we haven't done this very much, and to be fair, I'll do a better job in future. What I'll do is next time we do an episode, I'll look up the last couple of episodes and see if there's like any funny examples of our past takes coming true or false or whatever. But obviously, the one that we have to, like the elephant in the room, Kassad, here is, this is where the whiplash is killing me right now, guys. I feel like I've been on one of those fucked up roller coasters where I want to do like a class action lawsuit and sue them for like fucking pain and suffering, because every month of CS is like this, like, G2 completely failed the major. Like, Richard Lewis, like, what about now, dickhead? And then, like, next tournament, like, they'd win some tournament, and everyone's like, Richard Lewis and Kassad are frauds, they know nothing. It's like, oh, the whiplash, it's too much. So, I'm assuming we've got some hot takes that address this topic today. Anyone? Is anyone coming in with any hot takes?
Well, not from me. I just avoided the topic. You know, it's just fucking bullshit. I'm just happy NiKo won it.
Because I've got one here. I've got one for you. I've got a good one.
NiKo won it, you know, and he fucking delivered numbers, and he proved that he is the best player in the world.
No, don't worry. I've got one tied into it.
All right.
Yeah. Well, one thing I have to say about that is that, like, one thing I hate on analyst desks is when people are like, oh, we'll have to wait and see, you know, like, oh, like, we don't know yet. Yes. We don't know. Because the thing is that with this job, you want to be reactionary. You want to actually make a statement. Yeah. You want to have a say on everything. You like, because I find, like, if we're working in this profession and people are like, oh, what do you think of the flameZ roster move? And if we're paid to give our opinion and that opinion is, oh, I have to wait and see, I think that's failing at this position. Sure. But with things like G2, that actually makes it feel like you should always say that. You should always say, oh, I guess we'll wait and see. Because you never know. Because every tournament could be a completely different tournament for some of these people, because the variance is so high for some of these teams, honestly.
Two things. One, that's actually why everyone I know in esports is a moron and just misses the whole fucking point of what's going on. You all can't see the fucking wood for the trees. Like, everyone missed. You know, everyone complains, right? Even though he's very well loved. One of the things people complain about with Maniac is exactly that Mauisnake. It's like, all he does is play it safe, you know, because it's just his personality if people don't know. He's not a guy who's going to say outrageous things. He's a very polite individual who's he'd be the worst ever guest on this show. Like, it's not his style at all. His style is like the opposite of a hot take. It is very measured like that. Now, here's the thing, he wouldn't just say we'd see, but, you know, he'd make it very flowery how he'd explain that, you know, could go bad, could go good. People missed that he actually put his balls on the table. Did no one else see this? Dude, he didn't just argue that, like, ZywOo's really good. When people challenged him, he said, I mean, he meant in CS2, obviously, he said that at the end of ZywOo's career, he will own every single individual record ever. That's pretty fucking ballsy, guys. Because, by the way, spoiler, there's one thing that I think's mad. I could make this whole hot take, but I won't do a whole digression. I actually think Simple's ruined all your fucking brains. Like, what's this shit where people, cause Simple and NiKo did this, you all think you can watch like a year or two that's really amazing and go, well, he'll definitely just do that for 6 more years. Like, you're actually the dumbest motherfucker of all time if you think you can guarantee that. That's why, actually, I think mad props to Maniac for having that hot take. Because, by the way, that's an enormous gamble. You are aware, guys, he's actually implying ZywOo. By the way, for his gamble to even work, remember, people like Simple and Device better just stop winning anything ever again. And once they stop, ZywOo has to win something like what? Bear in mind, I take away the online ones. He has to win what, like 10 MVPs or something like. It's not going to be easy, guys. Everyone again is just taking it so for granted. So here's my hot take to start the episode. It's actually, it'll sound not that great a hot take, but if you think about it, it's actually a perfect hot take. Because when you do a hot take, you have to have a sense of what the community actually thinks, right? That's why some of the hot takes sometimes to us don't sound that spicy, but then you realize sometimes fans are totally off base, and then sometimes vice versa. You think you've got a great hot take and you realize actually that is sort of like everyone has like an edgy take on that one. But here's one for you. I actually think this is the best way to phrase it with the HooXi and the NiKo and Richard Lewis and kassad. This is how I would phrase it, and this is so whack it's impossible. CSGO fans would rather they themselves are proven wrong than kassad or Richard Lewis ever be right. Now, you might think, what a weird... How could you ever know that? I'll tell you why. Because think of some of the past episodes where we were told, me and kassad, that we're like homers for NiKo, right? Because we defended him and we said maybe it wasn't his fault. No, wait a second. So the same community that is tearing NiKo's arse apart every major is now going to also turn around, the same people, and go to kassad and gaslight him and go, ha, idiot, he has the best possible IGL he could have. What, you think any other IGL in the entire world could be his IGL? You are a moron. It's like those two positions are literally mutually exclusive. They cannot both exist at the same time. But what's mad is, I actually get the feeling, specifically with kassad and Richard Lewis for some reason, people just won't let that be accurate at all. Like, as far as I can tell, the straw man is, they make out that the take you guys had was that HooXi will never win any match ever in the history. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get it, because I described it like this to my fans. It's like they act like if you're not 100% right, you were 100% wrong. It's not a binary topic, is it? There's like a massive spectrum to it. Like, the sad thing about the whole topic, by the way, which we can get into if you want, I'm sure you guys have some thoughts yourselves, is if anything, it is an interesting topic now, the HooXi thing, because for me, it's actually like maybe one of the rare edge cases where you can be not a great IGL but win, and also sort of in the middle somewhere. And if anything, it's probably one of the best sort of test cases you could ever see of how much does an IGL do and how stacked can a lineup be. I think that's the more interesting discussion with the HooXi thing, rather than is HooXi shit or not, you know. Anyway, what do you think of that hot take, Lux? I think it's real, dude. The reason I say it's whack, though, is because, like, I can't get that at all. Like, why would I myself it's like, I'm willingly going to be wrong myself so that you're wrong and you're an idiot. Like, what's that? What? Like, surely I want to win. Surely I want to be right, you know. I don't get it, mate.
Yeah, the thing is, like, people just want to find a way to tell me, like, fuck you, kassad, like, you're wrong. Like, whatever it is. If NiKo plays well, then it's like, yeah, you were fucking wrong about HooXi, fuck you, right?
Yes.
If NiKo plays bad, then yeah, fuck you, you were wrong about NiKo. Where is your boy NiKo? Like, how is he doing now?
You can't
it
win.
doesn't fucking make sense.
They've got you there,
right?
they've got you.
It's just whatever I say doesn't fucking add up to them, right? In these little delusional minds, right? The amount of messages,
true.
and I write like a tweet like NiKo playoffs is over like ZywOo playoffs, right? And the tweet,
I don't know why that's even an edgy tweet to me, by the way. That just shows me how overrated ZywOo is. Like, why else anyone complain about that?
Like, I didn't even attack ZywOo. Like, ZywOo is a great player. Like, it doesn't make sense. I'm just thinking that NiKo is a better player in the playoffs and overall a better. That's fine if you think something is better than the other, right? It's not insulting to the other. I'm not saying this guy is bad. I'm just thinking that NiKo is more complete, that NiKo is more impactful. It's just the way it is. Like, if you look at the series in the playoffs, you remember how Vitality won the major, right? Through what bracket and all these things. And look at the teams that for example, G2 beat to get to this title as well. All like Ants, and all good teams, Ants, FaZe, right? You know, Australia stayed twice. It's like the team that actually played well. It's just, it's not the easiest thing to do, right? And they've started from the semis as well. It's just, this completely, like, NiKo played just an amazing game throughout the whole fucking event. Like, one of those legendary games. And all people seems to think, like, fuck you, kassad, HooXi is, you know, great IGL. So in 2 months from now, they're going to go back to the other place. They're gonna play like shit. They're gonna get eliminated somewhere, and it's gonna be again not HooXi's fault. It's gonna be, fuck you, kassad, NiKo plays like shit. So it doesn't really make sense to me at all. So it seems that you cannot never win with these people because they don't understand the essence of the point, like the core of the point that I'm trying to make. So it's just fucking annoying sometimes, but it's pretty funny. 85% of the times, 15% of the times, it's just annoying. So go, Maui.
I mean, fighting against fans is really difficult because they're always going to find a new slant to try to take you down with. So I only fight back against people who are just wrong in the outright comment nowadays, I think. I mean, I can move on to another take. I feel like you guys have covered this one pretty well, but
yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean,
the comment. All right.
I just okay. Well, the only thing I can really say about this is that like certain pundits in this space are just total punching bags for a lot of the community, and if you excite the community, there's going to be people that fall in love with you, and there's going to be also people that want you dead, essentially. And one of my just life axioms is that I'd rather live that life than the life of someone that no one really even cares about. So I think we're all pretty much succeeding at that. So I don't really. I mean, I think it's good. I think it's
the amount
good.
of messages like in DMs that I got like the different ways. Like I think you're right. They don't want to say it publicly, right, or for some fucking reason. I think you're right. I think whatever you're saying, like you're completely, ignore like the. I hope people are not like hating you too much because I think you're right. You're whatever, right? And then there's people like I hope you fucking die. Similar to Maui, I would rather say what I actually think than be like, yeah, we're gonna wait and see. We're gonna do this, play it safe. I understand some people are fine with that, and like we said, you spoke about Maniac, and he's completely like he's one of the best analysts, if not the best, together with Yanko, and that's his personality. Like he's saying things like in a more eloquent way, in a more elegant way. That's fine. Like that's perfectly fine. But there is also like I'm not like that. I'm just saying as I feel like it. As
I pointed out, you are more blunt. That's why you need the blunt tip from thefreezepipe.com, LFN, code for 10% off. Right, go on, Maui. What was the actual take you would have spin into? You didn't give it.
Oh, well, the other thing is that, okay, so it's kind of like, slightly transitioning into another take entirely, is that with Vitality and to an extent what ZywOo didn't perform to in their semifinals match, my take as a whole is just that Vitality wouldn't have won that series with dupreeh over flameZ because there was some like pushback, like people started having some like 2020 hindsight on the move when it happened, like a lot of people celebrated the move for being very forward thinking when they brought on flameZ, where in essence people were saying like this is good because you're going to pick up a rising talent as opposed to keeping dupreeh on the lineup because he only really kind of got it together for the couple events like IEM Rio and then the major. And then when he before that though, he was bad. Like dupreeh was easily the worst player on Vitality, and I'm including Apex because Apex is satisfying at least his role on the team as he's putting up bad numbers. But dupreeh was set up in positions to succeed, and so like basically what I'm trying to get to here is that some people after that match were like, oh, if they had like I wouldn't have pulled the trigger, I wouldn't have done this, I would have kept dupreeh, keep riding it out. If you're winning, just keep winning. But it's like I watched that game back really closely between ENCE and Vitality, and I watched even flameZ's POV on it too. flameZ was balling out on Mirage, and they lost 16-14 on that map. If that were dupreeh, that game would not even have been that close. So I don't actually think that if they had dupreeh, they would have done any better. In fact, they could have even done worse in this tournament. So that's my take right there, is that having dupreeh over flameZ in this instance would have even made the team worse. And really, the burden on this in this matchup was probably more on the shoulders of people like ZywOo and Magisk, who didn't perform up to the standard that we're used to seeing from them.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it would be any different. If maybe even it will be even worse if dupreeh played. Probably. The thing is, like, flameZ he played all right. I don't think there is any blame on him. You said it nicely when you said the ZywOo didn't, play as he definitely could. he wasn't even close to his A game, whatever that was. Also, they had bad CT sides on that matchup. You know, they lost like with 9 rounds on the 9 or 10 rounds on the CT side of Mirage, and then 10 on Vertigo, right? So it was just and on top of that, some Pius was plus 30 on that matchup. Like, he was playing insane, right? So I think collectively they kind of underperformed. They should have won that game, considering the players they have. ZywOo didn't play well. Some Pius played well. Ensu had a better tournament than Vitality overall. dupreeh wouldn't help that a little bit at all. Probably even made it worse.
Okay. I mean, I basically agree with the take in general. Like, first of all, the reason why I think it's a terrible take anyway is because it's such a stupid premise. Like, the premise goes like this. The entire reason you do or don't do that move is just for IEM Cologne 2023 and not anything else in it. Like, that's not why anyone made the fucking move. Like, spoiler, I don't think anyone actually thought that the second flameZ enters the server, you are better than the peak of the dupreeh lineup. I think that's such an insane straw man premise, not least because this isn't a major. Like, actually, the whole point of doing that move is for the future. In fact, even when I saw Flames specifically, I thought to myself, I mean, I already had a hint that maybe like you didn't have a buyout, so you save money. But also, it's for CS2, that move, obviously. Like, there is no more majors in CSGO. Like, it's actually the best time ever to sort of tank a few months and hope that you level up. Because if you think about the negatives he was bringing in, 2 of them that I do think affect him here is, one, he just is inexperienced, so he was never going to have like an insane pop-off right in Cologne in the fucking playoffs. But then a bigger deal to me is, because you've changed the play, it's not about Flames even on this one. You've just changed the map pool. Like, the biggest difference between this Vitality and the one that won the major is when they won the major, it also was like, this is the other reason I wanted Heroic to play them. It's the only team that had a chance with the map pool. They had everything nailed. Does no one remember? They were like Punish picking Anubis into people. They had everything at that one tournament. They had the whole map pool locked. Well, as soon as you change any player, guys, it's why I do treat 5-man lineups distinctly different from even the same lineup. Like, I don't Team Liquid in 2018 the same as 2019, even though all you changed was duo and tack. Because you see, it changes the map pool, changes your style of play. There's so many things one player change can change. So to me, it was logical when you make this move that you're going to have all the downside at the fucking beginning. Right now, the first real tournament, the other blast one, everyone knows is like a warm-up. So I don't think that's a big deal. I think that if people actually think that that's it, you should have kept dupreeh saying it wasn't about winning this one. And then lastly, I'll just say that. It's like I said on the last episode. There are certain people, this is the other thing about the HooXi thing we'll get to later that drives me crazy, is this angle where it's like, look, you guys all agree with what I agree with, which is the ultimate goal for NiKo is win the major. It isn't win Trifunović and Cologne. That's like the secondary goal. So for him, nothing's changed. He hasn't won the major. Same shit here. Vitality, especially people like ZywOo and the top players, they're not here to, look, it'd be cool to win Cologne, but it can't be their main priority. They want to win another major. They want to win the first CS2 major. That's why you make the move. So I don't think there's not really any reason to be mad at them at all. And then just look at even the result. Guys, if you're going to bag on this result, they only lost to the 2 teams that were in the fucking finals and were the hottest teams in the whole tournament. And quite frankly, by the way, right now might even both be better teams than Vitality. Like, it's totally reasonable the way they lost. And the semi-final against Ents, they could have just won that. That could have been like 2-0. And then lastly, I'll spin this into a take if you want. This is why it has to come back to ZywOo. Because, mate, I feel like I've come through a fucking like portal or something. Because I was there when NiKo and Simple got criticised for years when they were the ones who had to 1v9 the game. Nobody said it's okay that you didn't do it. It was the default that they not only had to 1v9 the game, but then if they even played like a normal star, people would say they had a bad tournament. Not a bad game, bad tournament. So if you go and look at both the games that they lost here, Vitality, it's the same story both times. ZywOo just goes missing and doesn't end up carrying the game. Now, it's definitely not that he's the worst player on the team. That will almost never happen. But there was definitely times in these big matches, and this is why I'm going to spin it into my take, that this is actually the default. I know it's going to sound counterintuitive because when a fan hears, wait a minute, so at the end of the tournament, what happens is when the superstar super carry doesn't perform, his team loses. Well, that is logical, isn't it? Because he's a super carry. But that also is the problem. I think I said it best on Twitter. Dude, Simple would get brutalized for mega carrying a semi but then losing the final. ZywOo would just lose the semi and play bad in that, and then everyone's like, it's fine though because X, Y, and Z. So here's the take I'm going to spin it into. ZywOo is easily the most overrated GOAT contender in the history of Counter-Strike. The history of the game. Because you have to realise, guys, you don't even get in the GOAT conversation unless you're mega legit normally. Like, my problem is this. if you look at his body of work, he can be in the conversation. But this is what I hate about this. I made this point before, but I'll be very brief with it. The same fans who themselves put him in this convo. I never put him in this convo, guys. Like, I tweeted this the other day. I think it's pathetic that ESL even called Monty a legend because he won fucking Cologne 1.5 years into his career. It's like, bro, what do these words mean anymore? So the same thing. I didn't put ZywOo in the GOAT category. I've kept him very reasonable. I've been tracking him the whole way. If you remember on a past episode, I even said I don't even think he's top 5. I'd have people like maybe even Kenny S still in the mix there, etc. But they put him in the convo, and then they complain that we're making him like be too scrutinised. Like, the problem I have with this is if I don't consider the GOAT convo, it's brilliant with ZywOo, still great, still tracking okay. It's got a couple of years to get it together. But if you have a look at the idea, like GOAT contender means today I compare you against anyone who ever played the game. These are the deficiencies. Is that every time you put him in the big pressure match, it's not even that he plays bad, he just doesn't carry. And by the way, that is mad unreasonable, but guess what? That's why if you do carry like that, we call you fucking, whatever his name is, Sasha fucking Kostyaev, the GOAT, because you did do it. You did.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like putting ZywOo in a GOAT content today is just mental. You should never do it. The longevity needs to be like, the career needs to be longer, right? It needs to be 5-6 years. Take other GOATs from other sports, right? Just, football, right? We have Messi, Ronaldo, right? How many years they had to like score thousands of goals per season to actually be
probably 10 years, at least 10, 15, right? Yeah.
Look at Michael Jordan. Obviously, everybody is like saying LeBron, Kobe, whatever, right? It's Michael Jordan. And everybody knows it. How many years since like he joined in Chicago Bulls in 84, 85, before he was transformed from a superstar into a GOAT contender into a GOAT? Like, he had to win all these things. He had to carry all these things for so many games, for so many rough playoffs and all these changes. Obviously, it's different in Counter-Strike because we have multiple tournaments and titles and everything. But it comes down to the major, right? And their run at the major was Monty into the Breach Apex Gamer League, and that's the playoffs, right? It's just it's different right now. And ZywOo, yes, can he be the GOAT in 5-6 years from now? Yes, absolutely. Is he the contender now? No, because he cannot be. He just cannot be, right? Just imagine, is Nikola Jokic a contender for the GOAT because he had 2 MVPs and now the title? Is he a fucking GOAT? Of course he fucking isn't. Is he the best player in the world right now in basketball? Yes, he is.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
It's just, it makes no sense. Yeah. But and you said it when in the past, when Simple or NiKo wasn't carrying enough, it was just fucking, slamming them all over the place. And now it's just, they lost because they didn't have dupreeh or it's a new lineup and all this shit. Just give me a fucking break. Pick up your run, pick your fucking lane and stick to it. Just for fuck's sake. Go, Maui.
Yeah, well, for the GOAT conversation, why you wouldn't really include ZywOo for me just kind of boils down to a couple things which you guys have already touched on. One is longevity. He doesn't have that. Another angle that we've touched on before, at least Thorin and I, when we talked about especially like Elige versus Twist, is peak of the player. And the thing is that you would never really definitively say that the peak of ZywOo has been, other than this year, been better significantly than anybody else, because you look at the 2 number 1s that ZywOo had over Simple, and the first year, I would say that with the team accomplishments, with the MVPs that he got in 2019, I would have actually put him higher than Simple in that year. But 2020 to me was very fraudulent because the one LAN tournament that mattered is where Simple did very well, and then HLTV had to go off of online results, and because ZywOo did marginally better online than Simple, they started weighing that higher.
And his team was better.
Yeah, his team was better, so there were more team accomplishments there as well. But that's where those personal accomplishments for number 1 right there are so flimsy in if you really boiled it down, whereas Simple has so many more years where he was definitively the best player. 2018, it was just there wasn't really a chance for the second place player, which was Device, to be fair, at that time, but it was just the margins between Simple and Device that year was so great that it was obvious. Nobody had any doubts going into that list who was going to be number 1. And so for that year, for Simple's peak, and on top of that, Simple's been doing that for 5 years basically. So like straight. So longevity, he just smashes him. And really, the body of work is where ZywOo could never really contest in an all-time discussion. If you want to say who the best player is for the last 3 years, you really do have an argument to be made right there. But if you want to say the greatest player of all time in CS:GO, there is only one answer. And I've been someone that has said like, you know, in the future we could consider somebody like Mauisnake to be the GOAT. But it's like we needed a lot of time for that person to get blooded and for that person to rack up the personal achievements and team accomplishments on top of that for me to even really entertain that conversation in good faith.
And by the way, I'll just throw this in there. The reason why I am legit as fuck that I criticise the shit out of ZywOo, but this is where people are wrong. You know, people always paint this mad straw man that I like never ever imply I'm ever wrong and I've said was right. You know my favourite player of all time is Device, right, you fucking morons. Like, I had to take it on the chin for like 3 years when this guy kept getting banged out every fucking time. By the way, he even did it just like ZywOo does. He wouldn't just like be bad the whole series. He'd carry the fuck out of map 1, be like, all right, on map 2, and you could have won 2-0. And then map 3, it's exactly like this, where you're like, right, it's your time. Just take over the game and we win the game. And then he would just have like the 14 kills or the 15 kills. And you just have like this lackluster performance. You just lose in like the worst way ever, by the way. You just get choked out. You don't even like get knocked out. You just gradually choke out. Like, and I never once, you can go back, just was like, well, it's fine. It's okay for him to be bad. Like, that's whack, bro. In fact, I've always said this. This is why I actually think I've nailed how you follow sports, because it is about the narratives. I've always said this. I would actually rather my favourite player scores 50 points in an elimination game in the NBA and loses than has 10 points and wins the game. Because what did he win? In that scenario, if he had 10 points, he was carried, wasn't he? So in this scenario, like, I want ZywOo to fucking carry the tournament, just like I was waiting years for Device to do it. But then when they don't do it, you can't then make an excuse, guys. You got to take it on the chin. It happened. It actually did happen.
Like, one last point to this is that, like, you have your rubric for how to grade a GOAT. Mine is slightly different than yours, as we have explained over other podcasts, but there's so many angles where you could basically say like other people are the GOAT of this game, but you just can't find an angle for ZywOo to actually be the GOAT, because if you actually choose any set of criteria, then there's going to be somebody else that just is better in those criteria than ZywOo. He's basically coming up second place in so many arguments, and longevity, obviously, he's like, 20th. Like,
here's the angle, Kassad. I'll give you it for free, right? This is what you haven't figured out, because if you use this angle, you can actually make it sound like a legit sporting angle why NiKo's the GOAT. So you know what they do? You'll know the answer when I explain this concept. In MMA, Kassad, logically, the real best fighter's the heavyweight, right? Because he would knock everyone out, and then, like, how could some lightweight fighter? But they don't do that, do they, Kassad? What they do is they have that concept pound for pound, don't they? So that way, the little guy like Volkanovski, because he is super sick, maybe he is the best, because, relative to how much weight he has, he might be able to beat everyone. So what you do is this, Kassad. Cause all these fucking AWPers get to dominate, and they're all the GOATs. What you say is this: NiKo is the dollar-for-dollar GOAT of CSGO. Because all he needs is an AK, baby. Those other motherfuckers need an AWP. Just give him an AK. It's 2,700. There you go. There you go. NiKo's the 2,700 GOAT of CSGO. if you only have $2,700 to buy one gun, he's the GOAT. There you go. That's your freebie.
Oh, that's a good one.
Not a bad angle, eh? It's not bad.
That's a good one. But I'll switch to my hot take for first one for today. And this is like, I think the spiciest one I have. Now people are gonna get mad a little bit because they like this team. It's about heroic, right?
Ooh, okay, this is gonna get good. Let me buckle in. Right, let's get in there.
And I think that heroic in 2023 is not even the top 3 team
for the whole year.
Of the whole year.
Okay. By the way, I have to say, Maui, the sad thing about Kassad's career now is it's bleeding outside of this show. Like, you probably saw that headline on that interview where he's like, heroic isn't top 1 because nobody's top 1, which is like a Kassad style hot take, isn't it? Because everyone's like, but there has to be a top 1. And that was already, I can see it was already baking people's noodles. So come on then, what do you think of this take? Like, top 3, come on.
Heroic is not even top 3 team this year.
Okay.
And
who is then? You have to give us the top 3 then. Who is top 3 instead of him?
Seriously, we need this.
It's
people.
No. Listen,
G2 has to be there. Vitality has to be there.
Those are the easy two. Those are the easy two. The third is the harder one.
You can go with FaZe if you want.
Okay, FaZe.
You can go with FaZe. It's not like I wanted to think about it more because I didn't know the order. Okay. But I had my top 3.
All right.
So the point is, if you look at their tournaments right now, they are either the luckiest motherfuckers when it comes to group draw.
They do have a lot of easy
they're-
groups for sure, yes.
Or they are doing something that we don't know about, right?
Yes.
Obviously, we don't know anything, but they're just super lucky. So I'm gonna explain it like this. For Blast, they had EG again, and Big. For complexity and OG, they had for the cutoff playoffs. Movistar and Big for EPL 9. They lost to Big. They beat Mongols and NIP for Rio, right? Blast Major, that was they beat FaZe, but then Apex and Liquid. Dallas, they had 9Z and Mouse Sports team that was already fucked up and gone, right? Blast again, Complexity with a standing, Imperial with 2-3 matches, you know, up.
He's making a good case so far, Maui. These names that he's spitting right now. Let him cook. Keep going.
Then Big again, then the new Navi lineup for the Blast, and then into Monty and Mongols for the playoff at Cologne. And now,
basically, if you don't know, guys, beating Mongols and Monty, because then they played Ensign, they decided, meant they already had a playoff at Cologne just from beating the Mongols and Monty. That is wild when you say it like that.
Yes. And now, in Gamers 8, in like a couple of days from now, whenever it is, they have Falcons into Apex or Gamer Legion for the semis and top 4 again. So let me
Come on.
rephrase that. If you put them in a spot where that was FaZe like and G2 were in, like on these tournaments, can they reach, or Vitality for that matter, and can they repeat the same success and get the same placings so we can consider them at the top 3?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Because by the way, if you ever do look, FaZe and G2 do seem to always get the fucking hard group and hard route, if you notice.
Exactly, especially those two teams, and two, right? So if you look all through all of these events, right, and just, you know, think like if you swap some of the teams there, can they make the same runs? Would they make the same? I can reread these names again. Now they have legit wins. Some against old Navi, some against, you know, FaZe. It's fine. There's not a bad team whatsoever. The thing is also, I wanted to mention about Cadian. Like I spoke to him, he was on the desk a little bit, and you know, I like the fact that he was like bullying people, like you know, in the matches, like shouting, trash talking, all these things, right? And I wanted to see more, but he kind of quieted down for some reason. But I think that suited him more than the other thing that he was trying to accomplish with the flags and the dancing and the speeches and stuff like that. So I do respect that a lot, but like, let's go back to the hot topic, right? It's just for me, I don't see them as a top 3 simply because of that. I'm not really sure about 2022, but 2023, I don't think they're there at all.
Okay.
Reaction.
I am just gonna say I think HooXi had a better year than FaZe has. The only thing that, like, in terms of achievement that FaZe has really done this year that makes me think, like, but it's not really even indicative of what they did this year. It's more of what they did last year, is that they won the Grand Slam at ESL Pro League. That one achievement makes it feel like this year has been still kind to FaZe in some ways. But when you look at some of FaZe's results, as they're the most flimsy of the other 3 teams, like I would put Heroic as having the 3rd best year. That's basically where I'm coming back at this one, is that, and I would probably put FaZe as 4th and ENCE as 5th. And I would just say that, or even switch ENCE and FaZe. Actually, there's a case for that.
How can you? Sorry, before you could, how can you put Heroic in front of ENCE on this one? Cologne finals, won Dallas, semis of the fucking Pro League.
Because ENCE weren't really good at the beginning of the year. They didn't even make it to Kato.
They can't play Blast.
They didn't even make it to Katowice. They fell.
Play Blast in January and June.
They're
not allowed because the fucking idiots are not letting them play. How the fuck can they beat their results, heroic results in Blast when they're not allowed to play it?
They played at IEM Katowice play-in, and they couldn't even beat Complexity. They lost in the play-in. That, to me, is like the most damning result against ENCE so far this year.
It's more damning than losing to Gamer Legion in the semifinals of the Major?
Yes, that is more damning. That's way more damning. That is way more damning. At least one's on a stage. At least one's on a stage, the other's in a studio. Losing to Complexity. After what we saw Complexity has failed to accomplish this year,
even worse,
losing to Complexity is so awful. Like
Maui losing on stage as a top 3 team, top 2 team in the semifinals of a major, last CSGO major against Gamer Legion is not worse than losing the Complexity in studio in some fucking planes?
Yeah, but if Ents has to try so hard at these like few events that they get, and then they don't even actually show up to the main event of Katowice, I consider that a massive failure. In fact, when I saw that,
they won fucking Dallas, and they were in the finals of the most competitive event of the year in Cologne. Beating many,
But this
many
way, I
good
can see
teams.
both sides. Here's what kassad means by that. The reason why it's worse to lose in the semis, even though it is the semis of major and Game Legion played great, is because it's way more likely they beat you in some meaningless play and that no one gives a shit about in a tournament area, isn't it? Like, they're way more likely the underdog upsets you there. And then secondly, what he means about the blast thing is, why is Ents even in a plane for Katowice Maui? Because they don't play a blast circuit, therefore they can never get the bloody rankings you need to. Like, the joke is, if you ever go look, teams like Astralis are the ones you need to look at. Mate, because they play in blast, they just need to fucking trip over and they come top 10 in the world. It's mental how that ranking works. Like, there is somewhat scuffed about that. But anyway, I'll just say this. I'm sort of more on the Maui side. I don't know if I'd actually say that they're not a top 3 team. I would just reframe your hot take. I would just say the hot take is this. Before people look into who they played, because you did a good job listing off like how underwhelming the results are and how some of the teams they've lost to. If you actually look who they've played, before you look at that, everyone's going to say automatically, well, they've got to be a lock for top 2 of the year, right? It's them and Vitality would be the story. Whereas if you actually look, no, actually probably G2 is better than them. Like, if you look at, like, especially for the ceiling, obviously it's the reason why Heroic doesn't win the event. So I actually do think essentially, like, their run is overrated. Like, if they're top 3, even if they're 3rd, they are pretty overrated, actually. Because when you look, like you say, not only how do they have to beat, they've had some insanely lucky bracket draws, you're right. But then also, they then have lost to all the fucking underdogs this year. Like, that is actually pretty whack. Because here's the problem. The angle that doesn't work for Heroic is, everyone's trying to do that angle of like, right, they're like basically like they're the new Astralis core before they won. They can win, but they don't in the big match. No. Let's just understand this for a second, guys. When Astralis would lose in the semis, it would be to top 10 teams to ever play Counter-Strike. Heroic is losing to Gamer Legion and fucking Mouse. And like, you know what I mean? Like, that's on another level, boys. And that's like, that is beyond the pill. It's not like Device was fucking choking against nobodies in a match. Like, he was choking against like Olaf Meister and fucking Get Right and Kenny S and Guardian, like the greatest players of all time. So I can see both sides of it. I would just reframe it as they're overrated as a top team or something.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I get that angle, and I also think that some of the runs that Heroic has are a little bit inflated because the competition that they have is on the easier side. But like, let's just remember, Ents lost to NIP and Into the Breach at the major also. Like, these are big stages too, and they also can lose to pretty bad teams. I want to go to my take because I'm going to get a whole country angry with this one, and I might even get Thorin angry with this one. Is that m0NESY today is better than Prime Kenny S. So this is if you dropped m0NESY back into 2015 with that Envious lineup when they won Cluj-Napoca, where he won the MVP, m0NESY would do just as well, if not better, than what Kenny S did there. In fact, I think he would do better. And so where Kenny S obviously Kenny S kind of has this like fabled skill ceiling that he was hitting back in 2014. And the one thing is that the numbers that Kenny S put up in that 2014 year were insane, but that was pre-op nerf. And so with m0NESY now, he's putting forward numbers very similar to what Kenny S was putting up in his prime, with a nerfed op in terms of movement speed, in terms of bullets, and then also on top of that, to me, m0NESY is a much more complete player. Like, his utility usage is so much farther along than where, and I think that's just one of those arguments where it's just that most people in the modern era are going to have better utility usage than people back in 2014 or 2015. But if you put m0NESY into, like, skill-wise, just watching them both play, honestly, if you take the nameplates off both these players, it's very similar in terms of the highlight quality. So that's one thing for, like, eye test right there. And then on top of that, I think, like, both of them have shown some pretty good moments with just, like, pistols. I would say their rifle game is probably where I would consider them both kind of on the weaker end. But honestly, I just think that if you had a time machine, put m0NESY in it, dropped him in 2014, he would be the best player on the planet easily.
Did you say he would be the best player on the team? Oh, the world?
Yeah.
Easily. If you put today's m0NESY in 2014, he is easily the best player in the world.
And search help.
And he's better than Prime Kenny S.
I can see what you're trying to say, in a sense that mechanically maybe now m0NESY is better than Kenny was. but the game is completely different. And if you look at it, I'm just looking at it right now. I think what the year that m0NESY had in 2022 is the exactly same year KennyS had in 2013 or 14, right? Because they were ranked 6th and 7th. KennyS was ranked two times. 2013, 2014, he was ranked 6th, and then 6th again.
Okay.
m0NESY was ranked 7th. So I think the start of his career is very similar to the KennyS's one, right? They both have good teammates right now, and KennyS had it before. I think they're just, let's say, Kenny's career was like, you're just right there at the peak of it, and m0NESY's was like starting right here, and it's gonna go up. Can he catch him? Because I don't think he got there yet. Does he have the skill? I think he has more skill than Kenny, but is he going to be able to do the same things as Kenny did for many years? We have to, wait and see. I don't know. The thing is, like, he has a potential to be a superstar like Kenny was. The question is he going to be able to do it? He's now 18 years old, and Kenny was, 19 or 20 back in, but he won that number 6 or the 2014 year, whatever it was, right? He was like, 20 years old. So it's pretty similar. Like, actually too similar, if you ask me. They have the same style.
Eerily similar.
Yeah, and Rifle is much better for m0NESY than for Kenny. And I do think m0NESY is a little bit smarter player than Kenny. So if you say overall, if you compare the 2014 Kenny and the 2022 m0NESY, I would say m0NESY. But, it's still way too early to say something like that because it really cannot, compare right now. Because m0NESY is, a year and a half in the pro competitive highest tier scene, and Kenny was, from 2013 till 2017, 18 at best, right? And that was the end. So maybe in 4 years we can have this discussion again.
You'll never get me mad. I mean, first of all, you cited envious at close the poker. KennyS dropped off months before that. He was in Titan when he was the beast, mate. Like you say, it was 2014, early 2015. Remember, the Open Earth was like April. I think it was actually April 1st or the 31st of March. And it was like right on the border. That's why famously people thought it was a joke, even though the joke is it never was. It just continued to this day. So there's 3 angles why that's not the case. One, even when kassad just happily just gives that up and just goes, yeah, maybe he's more skilled. Like, I don't care what anyone says. I'm with fucking Apex on this one. I think KennyS might be the most skilled player to ever play Counter-Strike. It's him and Simple, in my opinion. Him, Simple, and NiKo are probably my top 3. I don't even think ZywOo's at the top of that list. I think the thing with ZywOo that's amazing to me is the polish. It just seems like it's so fucking well-rounded from day one. That's the crazy part to me. So I think that's intuition. I do think m0NESY's in this category. Like if I'm doing prodigies to ever play Counter-Strike, it'd be top 5. But essentially, I think it's not that I'd say one or the other's right on that one. I think they're both insane. Like if people don't know, early KennyS is a reason why he was 16 when he was in very games or whatever. It was also the same thing. It was just a phenom. It just hit every flick. And that style is, like you say, it's the only person. It's only basically KennyS and Simple you can compare m0NESY to. They have the fucking that crazy flick style. No one else ever did that, but actually hit the shots. Plenty of people tried the flicking style. That's why Henny became famous. Just don't land the shots. Then I'll give you the other one. So the skill one's a bit of a push for me. I could go either way on that one. I think people are just forgetting what prime KennyS was like. Then I'll go with the whole nerf angle. You've done the same thing with the ZywOo fans there. What you've done is your logic goes like this. Because now the gun's nerfed, if you unnerf the gun, m0NESY gets better. No, he doesn't. That's just an assumption. It's a pure assumption speculated out of your mind. There's no evidence in any context to bear that out. In fact, what we'd have to do, the only way we could do it, being as we can't go like that, is we'd have to sort of figure out, would KennyS be slightly worse with the nerf? A bit. Here's the thing, I don't think the nerf's actually what killed KennyS's game, if people don't know. I actually do think if you look at it, I mean, I know some things from inside the team. Basically, that was when he'd already had to hard carry the team for something mad. I think it was 5 or 6 months at that point in time when Kenny had been banned. I think that's what killed KennyS's game. Is he wasn't a guy who liked to grind anywhere. Now he had to not only grind, he had to be twice as good as everyone else in the game. I think that was never tenable. No one could keep that going forever. The mental strain is what's impossible there. And then the last thing is this. I'll just throw the stats out there. What you're doing right now, this is why it's appropriate for Hot Take Point Made, is you're doing what all the ZywOo fans do. Oh, you're riding with m0NESY today, because you just saw fucking Cologne. Take Cologne off there, bro. Where's this motherfucker this year? Nowhere. No one had him top player of the year, Maui. You're overrated from this tournament. Go look at the stats for this year, the best year of his career. He has 0.76 kills per round. KennyS, you can add a 0.1 to that. He was 0.86 kills per round. Like, and then lastly, let me know when Kenny S ever had a fucking NiKo on the side. By the way, I gave NiKo the MVP. I don't give a fuck about Mauisnake. NiKo was the MVP of this tournament. Let me know when Kenny S could have a Bing Chill as a sidekick and win a fucking major. Like, it would never happen. It would never happen in his whole career. So I don't hate it as a take. I just think potentially I disagree. And it's too much playing on that whole thing of like, a good all-star now would be the best player in the 1960s. It's like, well, what are we even discussing now at this point in time? Like, I don't get it. As far as I can tell, this is why I don't ever do, you know what, I never do those comparisons, even though I love hypotheticals. I never do player today dropped in the past. Because as far as I can tell, the real logic that people are like, haha, I'm smart, is like, it's like saying, if you took the dumbest person in class, but gave him the answers and put him there back to yesterday, wouldn't he? It's like, well, yeah, great. What are we even talking about at this point in time? That's fucking, why are we, like, how much longer are you going home soon so we can have a fucking convo? Like, I think it's just a shit point, so whatever, there you go.
Yeah, he said he's going to piss you off.
There you go. No, here's the thing. He didn't. What's good is I didn't get pissed off at the take, but I decided, right, how dare you come at Kenny? So I'm going to unravel your entire analytical approach, motherfucker. There you go.
Well, if we look at,
I was like, Kenny, get down, Mr. President, get down.
Since you're what you're also using there are numbers for Kenny S when he had the KPR pre-nerf. So why? But you're also saying, how are we comparing them? Why would we pretend we know what Mauisnake's like pre-nerf when we can never do that?
Yeah, Maui, that's right, Maui. Yeah, you're right, Maui. You're absolutely right. What you're about to say now is that I'm actually going off what did happen, but you're going off what could happen, and therefore I'm wrong.
No. I'm saying in 2015 we know what happened to Kenny S after the nerf, and his KPR was what Mauisnake's was, but just like slightly lower. His rating was lower. He died way more often. All these numbers basically are just that when Kenny S post nerf, he was never as good as Mauisnake has been this year. So
let me just give you one last angle then,
one we can do.
Because the last angle I made is the one you're missing there. Let me know when Kenny S ever played in a lineup like this G2 lineup, by the way. Like, if I'm Mauisnake, what better lineup could I ask to be in right now? I have actually a better player, NiKo, next to me. I have probably the most OP anchor you could ever have in JKS. Oh, and by the way, you know that Hunter guy who we haven't even mentioned the name of? Yeah, he was just fucking around with top 10 in stats at this tournament too. Like, mate, this is one thing I'm sick of in esports. Production is not universal. You can't act like, okay, by your logic then, Maui, I'll spin it back to you. Here's how I'll wreck you on this one completely. Right, we'll take him honestly back in time. You're right, I'm going to take him back for you, mate. But he has to play on flip side. There you go. He's playing on flip side. Does he get these numbers? No, he doesn't get to play in G2. No, you've actually just pretended for real that G2 Mauisnake now, you drop him in any team and he puts those numbers up, right? Because, by the way, do you know he has to play with to do Kenny S's numbers by your logic? He has to play with RPK, who just came back from retirement, Apex, who's a mad liability even then, Maniac is his fourth best player, and then he's got Existence. So drop him in that team. There you go to town, bro. Go on, bro. Fucking carry the shit out of everything. Because the real problem with this one to me is, I think it's just a bad comparison, because if you do it with like a great player now, they're all in great teams. Kenny S has one of the most unfair set of teammates I think ever in history. He's had some mad fucking losses he had to carry, boys.
I'm just thinking, like, at some point, Kenny did play with NiKo, right?
Oh, when they were in G2, they very briefly, but that was when like Kenny S got took off the op. It was only like a month or something ridiculous, wasn't it? I think it wasn't very long.
NiKo, Hunter, Jack, Samanek.
When NiKo first joined the team, yeah, but that was very briefly. It wasn't real, and it wasn't on LAN. It was all on the online era.
I can't remember how long. That's the thing. I'm trying to remember how long it was.
Anyway, should we pivot? Have you got a last point? I
just want to like add more. I do agree with the only argument I would agree with Duncan here is the fact that Kenny, you know, in his prime, didn't really have any kind of support at all on superstar level, right? Now, Mauisnake has...
I mean, I even would have joked with you, Maui, when you were like, Mauisnake has better utility, which first of all is mad unfair, because obviously utility as a concept didn't even exist back then. But even the obvious answer would be, who the fuck's Kenny S throwing it for, mate? What, I mean, he's just going to stand back there, all right, maniac, go on in, mate. Like, at this point, he may as well not have utility. He must just use the AWP, and it's like, you know what? I'm not even buying a fucking flashbang. That's $300 off my next AWP. Exactly.
Exactly.
Wait, what do you want?
Like, yeah,
by the way, shout out Maniac. Do love you. Love you,
he never really got that superstar level on his teammates. But my take, the next one is, it's not that spicy, but it's maybe even obvious at this point because of the state of the team right now. Is Liquid, right? I don't think they're gonna make a single final till the end of this year and probably half of the next one. I don't think this lineup is very well organized, very well orchestrated. I don't think it's going forward. The games they played Blast were okay to watch. The eye test was fine. Then I watched them in Cologne, and they lost to 9. They were like struggling against big, and it was like at the end they just snapped and lost. But I don't think there is any synergy in the team. I feel like Naf is struggling because he doesn't really know what to do. Rainmaker is there, but he's like also super passive. And now we have OC, who is completely, I'm gonna say useless, but not in a sense that he's a bad player. Just saying in a sense that he is not getting to do what he wants to do or what he can do, simply because he has Patsy and Yekinder, who are crazy, mad, aggressive. And on top of that, we have Yekinder, who is IGL, his numbers dropped. It's completely nuts right now. I don't think that team is... The idea of switching to EU and maybe getting a CS talent is fine by me. Maybe you lose a little bit of identity in the culture, but if you get the results, nobody fucking cares. Now they lost identity in the culture and they're not getting the results. I don't think they're going to get them unless they change again something. And I said it before, I don't like Yekinder as an IGL. He doesn't have any more value. He's just a player who just runs and dies without any impact whatsoever. He is going to pop off here and there. People are going to think he's still good, and he would be good if he just dropped that stupid IGL role. It's not for him. And I don't know about this new Bulgarian kid. It seems that he has skill, but I don't think he fit in well. Obviously, there is a thing that two of them, Patsy and Rainmaker, didn't really speak English in their teams at all. So that's a kind of obstacle they need to. That's an obstacle they need to deal with. I don't know. I just don't have any trust in them. I don't think people are feeling well in that team. I think they made a mistake. And the bottom line is the results will show in the next 6 months. Obviously, we don't know when the CS2 is coming out, but whatever happens, I think it's going to be a struggle for Liquid for at least next 12 months, unless they correct the mistakes they made.
Okay.
With Liquid, I will say that with the move that they made, to me, it reads more like they went for, say, a couple of budget signings here, and to me, it's almost kind of like, it's not like they're trialing Patsy and Rainmaker necessarily. It does feel like, to me, the core people on this team are Naf and Yekinder, and to an extent OC, because they decided to keep him, and there probably just weren't any oppers that, for whatever reason, I don't know why they didn't want to touch Dexter or Wonderful or people like that, but they just decided to kind of go with what to me read as a budget move. Like, Rainmaker and Patsy were both relatively inexpensive signings, that's for sure. And so when I see that, I just kind of am more of the opinion, like, why not, like, it's like the vision of the team completely changed, which doesn't feel like it should happen, because you would expect that a Team Liquid is a perennial contender for titles for the entirety of this team's like history, or the organization's history. So this is a downgrade, because they, to me, just feel like they're sort of just testing things out, because at the same time, why not, when Yekinder is trying to learn how to become an IGL, don't give him, like, if you gave Yekinder right now, say Dexter, you gave him, I don't know who the hottest people that were on the market necessarily were, but like, let's just say it's people like you gave Yekinder, Naf, Frozen, Dexter, and say like Perfecto, for whatever reason he just gets that lineup, like, no one would really, like, that team would probably just flop, simply because Yekinder is not a good enough in-game leader. And so what Liquid are able to do right now, in my eyes, is that, and I don't necessarily agree with this whole thing, but I feel like they're just like, Yekinder, you're going to learn how to in-game lead. We're going to pick up a couple guys that are cheaper on the market right now, and then by the time you're a better in-game leader, maybe we'll get a better signing. So I think that this is a project that doesn't, to me, signal that it's like a permanent fix for Liquid. It's more like I'm not surprised at all if the lineup actually just changes in 6 months, or before the first major, that is.
Okay. I mean, I already get my take last episode. I actually do think this lineup's just a bit overrated. The problem is, like, in isolation, each move is fine, but I kind of agree with the bigger point you were making there. The main issue, and I'll probably do a video on this soon, is it's just the lack of ambition from Liquid. Like, essentially, aside from the Yekinder signing, the last few years of Liquid have been mad underwhelming. It's like washed players, or players that just haven't made it yet. It's like we're saying here, like, for real, if you are signing CIS talents, then if you're Team Liquid, you should be in the market for Electronica Perfecto. That should have been on your radar as like a real move that could happen. Why aren't you with someone who's considered Dagger and Dexter, etc. Because that's the biggest problem to me. As soon as they decided we're not doing the NA thing anymore, now there's no excuse left, guys. Like, now you just got to go for broke. Like, you're joining the EU qualifier anyway. So, yeah, I'm with you on that one. Right, I'll spin into a take of mine then. Because on the one hand, this is one where it's not actually that spicy a take, and there's a cheat element to it, but it just sounds like a straight fire take. Because one thing that is pissing me off now with this HooXi thing is this. Notice none of the people laughing want to put any of their own skin in the game. They don't want to go, oh, since you guys are wrong, I will now insert my opinion. HooXi's actually a top 3 IGL in the world. That person doesn't exist, by the way. At the same time as we're not ever allowed to criticise a guy who has never played a major playoff match for G2. He's played for them while 2 majors took place, by the way, guys. We're not allowed to ever criticise that he might not be the right man for the job. But at the same time, no one's going to tell me he's one of the best IGLs in the world after he's just done a historic accomplishment. He won Katowice and Cologne in the same year. If people don't know, the only people who've ever done that is Pronax and Carrigan. Like, they're GOAT fucking IGL guys. So my question is this, where is HooXi in the GOAT? Where is he? Why is no one saying, and I think HooXi is top 5 in the world. So the meme one that goes into a real point is this. HooXi isn't even still a top 3 Danish IGL. Now, the cheat is the top 3 Danish IGLs are the top 3 IGLs in the world. But, like, who's he better than? Is he better than Cadian because of this? I don't think so. Is he better than Carrigan? I don't know anyone who thinks that. And is he better than Snappy? Mate, Snappy almost fucking won over him with like half the team. Like, the joke is, bearing in mind, I actually wanted, by the way, Snappy to be the person who replaced fucking HooXi. I don't know that he's necessarily shown me I was wrong. Because I'll give you a couple of angles. There's the major one already. Why now it's fine to just bomb all the majors? I don't know. I don't know why that's okay. Because that's the main reason everyone tells me Carrigan has problems. And I would agree. I think you have to perform at the majors. Then I'll add this in. The reason why I'm still not impressed by the HooXi angle, because people are going to think, oh, what the fuck, how? I actually think he might end up being the fucking exception that proves the rule for me, Maui. You know my theory that listen, he's not a bad IGL, so I guess the theory still, I have a rule that goes, you can't be a bad IGL and win the biggest tournaments. It's just not possible. I don't think he's bad, but I also implied you have to be good in some sense. That's my problem. I just think he's average. Because if I add these two pieces of information in, I think it just makes his accomplishment way less impressive. So here's the 2 players that are his best players, and essentially at every tournament will be competing with each other like this Cologne to be the MVP of the tournament. Not one guy. Remember, if Ents won, it was some bias all day long was going to be the MVP. In this team, by the way, he had like 3 people contending, but let's say by the end it was between Mauisnake and NiKo. Right, so let's just look at those 2 players, guys. So Mauisnake, bearing in mind ZywOo, if people don't know, when he joined Tier 1 was already 18. Mauisnake basically is the best young player ever. He's 17 now, and he's still a fucking stud. He just turned 18 recently, but you know what I mean? Like, he was 17 when he did a lot of this shit. So actually, we've never even seen a player that young, essentially, except Old simply wasn't in a team this good. So you might have the best young AWPer ever, and then who's your other star player, right? If you guys can watch that final of Cologne and tell me you think HooXi is why NiKo did that, I can look at you through the side eye and go, you just don't understand the game much. Because what the fuck are you talking about? Like, the Mirage game's the best example. That whole game is won by NiKo just doing the most god-tier fucking mid-round lurks you will ever see, where he catches any rotation, anyone trying to help someone, he always just picks them off. Like, that's nothing to do with HooXi. He didn't fucking call that. Not least because it's NiKo. What, you think HooXi, did he get a DeLorean and go back to 2016 and tell NiKo how to fucking lurk T-side of Mirage, did he? That's like NiKo's fucking office, you moron. He's been doing that for 7 years. So if you add these 2 pieces in, it's like, at this point in time, it's like I joked earlier, this is almost like the test case for how insane a team can you give someone before you have to stop, like, giving that much credit to the IGL. Like, I'm not exaggerating, I don't think anyone's ever had a crazier set of players than HooXi has. I can't think of anyone in history. Like, the joke is you actually have to for real go to like Carrigan with like the super team phase. Like, that's the fucking skill. And by the way, you guys were all brutalizing Carrigan for being 1 round from winning a major. HooXi's never even made a fucking playoffs with G2. Like, why is that okay? This is the ZywOo thing all over again. So it's cool for HooXi just bombed the greatest tournaments ever. How is it? So that whole thing frustrates me because, like, essentially, I know it sounds like a hater take, but this tournament actually didn't change my view of HooXi at all. I never thought he was shit. I don't even know that you don't have to even replace him, but I do think it's a gamble to keep him.
I'm not gonna say that he's a great IGL. I don't say he's a bad. I'm just saying he's bad for NiKo. Yes, they won. Yeah, great. They did win, right? But also, like you, I'm not gonna change my opinion on that one because he will definitely just take the majors, right? Just take the majors and the way they like you said, bombed them, right? And the fact that he has maybe the most insane lineup in terms of skill.
Oh, it's insane. It's amazing, isn't it?
And proper roles in there that
Yes.
it's even better than what Kerrigan had in
Oh, it's
that prime
amazing.
phase. And it's just people don't just ignore that, and just for me, I don't see it, but coming into CS2, I think that the great analogy would be that, like you said, like they don't need to cut him now, obviously because he won this, but keeping him would be definitely a massive gamble, right? Because what happens on the next major? How many majors we're talking just only about majors, right? How many majors do you need to skip or fail in order to, make a change or something, right? Because I don't see them winning a CS2 major, because we don't know what the fucking CS2 is going to look like or who's going to come out at the top.
By the way, logically, like I said earlier, if you're a HooXi supporter who thinks it's egg on the face of Richard and kassad, then just say it. Just say that they will win the next major. Just say it. I on this day, July, I predict G2 with. No one will do it. Dude, you'll never find these brave people. There's no one thinks HooXi's the best. No one has him top 3 IGL. No one thinks they're going to win. Like, what? So what are we laughing at then? We all agree that's just weird that they're winning, isn't it? Surely we all agree.
And even like in this greatest like IGLs, you can see like they have these trademark calls that they did. Like look at Glaive in the what's it, the E-League major, right? Against VP, the rushes on the fucking train and stuff. Those are calls. Those are direct calls. This is not based on the mid-round rotations or the individual decisions. It's a call, right? Then look at Kerrigan. You can point out 10 different calls that he made that won the different events, right? The signature things. Like when I go and look at this, there is nothing about the calls that was like super crazy fucking, at the right time. It was just like these players are playing crazy good. Hunter fucking destroys people in the playoffs. NiKo, obviously, like we saw the rating, we saw the games. JKS, Monesty, I mean, do we need to talk more about it? Like I said, it will sound like, they won and you're still not happy or some shit like that. But it's just the reality of the things, right? It's nothing more.
Oh, and by the way, I'll just throw this in there. Like, I mean, make the NiKo point even harder. You do know, guys, that NiKo had a 1.35 rating and he won this whole tournament. Like, you are aware that is like probably one of the craziest rifle performances in the history of Counter-Strike itself. But we're going to act for the HooXi fans like that's just a normal day at the office for your star player. Like, basically, if I'm Snappy Maui, what I should just do is just turn to all my players and go, what you doing, dickhead? Where's your 1.35 rating? Why aren't you doing your job? I'm a genius. Like, give me a break. Like, I think actually this is how I know NiKo is just mad hated on by the community. Dude, people aren't even raving about this fucking tournament. Like, that is actually one of the best BO5 rifle performances you will ever see ever in Counter-Strike. No joke, all 4 maps, he is even the one they lost, he is carrying on. Even on Anubis, go watch it. Like, this guy was a fucking stud. That's how I know people can only see the AWPers, bro. Like, I thought this was a masterclass the way NiKo played this final, mate. The whole tournament in general.
Elite level, right? Just GOAT level. And then yet again, I'm the one who is fucking biased and I'm the fucking fanboy of NiKo. But what more do you fucking need? What more do you fucking need besides this fucking tournament? To actually acknowledge that he is playing with a fucking rifle, delivering this on a constant level, and you still want to acknowledge it and you just still want to keep talking shit. So fuck right off. That's my fucking answer to that.
Okay, 3 things I want to address in everything that was just stated. The first is that with the fans' lack of reaction and praise that they should be throwing in NiKo's direction, I would say that the most likely reason for that is because they ended up beating ENCE in the grand finals, and public acceptance hasn't actually taken ENCE to be like an elite team, even though by all standards in terms of recent performances, they are. But I think a lot of people still see them as sort of like that tier 1.5 team if you're using like the hardest grading system ever. They're not like if NiKo did this against a phase which we know is worse than today's ENCE, then people would be raving about it a lot more just because it's against names that they're more familiar with. He did it against Robs, he did it against Twist, whatever. But instead it's like he did it against Diha and Sun Pius, like whatever. The second thing is that I think for HooXi's reputation, he needs to release comms videos because, or there needs to be more of that, because even that sliver of what AlexiB said like 3 years ago when he was microing Issa to do something like or whatever, like that gave Alexi such a long-standing reputation as a micromanager that still persists to this day. And so if HooXi gets a clip like that, or at least they release some more clips like that, then there's more likelihood that people are going to come around to the idea that maybe he is a good mid-round caller. Maybe he is actually directing NiKo to make some of these cool lurk plays. But as it stands, we just don't really have the evidence before us. And so we can't really say with any certainty what he's doing. It's like, it's basically
He's not,
why...
I'll tell you that.
Well, then I mean, there's no evidence to say it or not. And that's also why we like... So
by the way,
I
just want to blow people's minds a second. I'm not going to actually say this. I'm just suggesting it's hypothetical and kassad's not going to comment. Right? Think for a second, guys. You all think kassad is biased because he's friends with NiKo. So let's just put this on the table. You don't think NiKo ever has talked to kassad about how the teams run, what the call's like, etc. In the whole time, all these years, they've known each other. And remember, though, he's been in the team since like fucking blast fall groups last year. They never had that conversation. Like kassad could never know, because the reason I'm saying he can't say anything, he can't say like NiKo told me his shit. Like he's obviously not going to say that, is he? But you don't even, what's mad is the fan doesn't even account for that, Maui. They don't even give kassad the credit that he might actually know what they don't know. They can't even conceive of that idea.
Right.
Hey,
Right.
the last one, before you continue, Maui, I'm just going to circle back to ends, people not recognizing them to be a top-level team right now. The only defeats they have from the end of May were against VP on the Challenger, and they lost to G2 in the finals of this one. And that before that was last defeat on the Major, which was like fucking 3 months ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have all these wins against FaZe twice, Astralis,
Vitality.
Fnatic, Vitality, Heroic,
Yeah.
like all these teams, and they lost only to G2 in the finals, and people still have the balls to say like, you know, the Snappy is not good enough for that, or Ants is not a good enough team. Look at the players they have, right? The composition of the players. They had to build that by themselves. But anyway, go.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
it.
I don't think people are necessarily downplaying. Like, people aren't shit. No one that I have found has been shit talking Ents. It's more just like they haven't been elevated to greatness in terms of the eyes of the public yet. The last thing I was gonna say though about this point is that this isn't a hot take, but it is kind of one that I made. I made this as a hot take maybe like 7 episodes ago, and I'm kind of actually still persisting with this idea that I think that G2 is like, again, this is not really to me like a hot take, but it's like, because it's like I'm kind of sugarcoat. I'm making it really nice so that it's comfy and like I'm not putting myself out on one. I think that actually of all the teams right now, like that could win a Grand Slam, I think G2 has the highest probability of doing that. But I'm not saying it's because of HooXi. I'm saying it's because, once again, we see what happens when 3 or 4 of their star players just pop off. Like, it's insane. And this is why I did make a hot take maybe like 5 months ago plus before Pro League that I was saying that G2 will win the next Grand Slam and FaZe won't win that. That was a hot take at the time. And now, unfortunately, to make like this like an easier hot take for me, the Katowice win for the Grand Slam doesn't count because FaZe already completed that season of the Grand Slam by winning Pro League after the Katowice win. But right now, if FaZe didn't win that, G2 would have 2 notches under their belt for a Grand Slam, and I think that and it's pretty easy to say that they would have the highest likelihood to win a Grand Slam. But that's kind of just like a different statement entirely based off of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Any more hot takes?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead.
Well, okay. This is I've been just like riding this guy for such a long time now, and once again just proves to me how good he is. And so my take here, and I try to make it a little bit hotter than I needed to, is that Frozen will be a top 3 rifler for the next 3 years, including this year. He's only 21. To me, he is the most versatile rifler in the world who isn't named NiKo. And I love, like, when I watch Frozen play, his numbers are so impactful. Like, it's not just stat padding always, like, where it's just like super like worthless kills at the end of the round that don't matter. What I love about Frozen is that even in losing efforts, he's still able to put multi-frags on the board and sometimes will his team into rounds. And like, I've talked about Frozen so many times now that I feel like, you know, you just know that I'm like standing this guy like crazy, but I truly think that this guy is going to be like, I'm jumping on him now, like before it's too trendy, because it's basically like, to me, so obvious that Frozen's going to be for a while now, one of the best riflers out there. Dude can do it all. Like he can win, he can be aggressive at the beginning of rounds, which he used to do back in that 2019 Maus lineup, and he still shows flashes of that to this day. He can lock down a lot of his like connector rotator positions when he's on the CT side, and also like late round, dude is clutch as hell. So like, I mean, Frozen to me is like a top to bottom just phenomenal rifler right now, and I think that he's going to be consistently putting his name into like HLTV top 10s for the next 3 years.
You said top 3 rifler, right?
For the next,
Yeah, but I'm saying top 10 because they're going to put Oppers in that list too.
no, but what was the original premise? It was like for the next 3 years, he's going to be top 3. Is that it?
He's going to be a top 3 rifler, including this year for the next 3.
Absolutely not. But the thing is, like, I'm just disregarding. I'm gonna disregard the offers, right? But you know that some of the spots are already reserved for people. For example, NiKo, Exile, Robs, like they're like reserved spots, and then you want to put Frozen in there, which is completely insane. Simply because in order for him to do that, he needs to be more consistent. I said this before.
He's
in Renegade,
so consistent.
He isn't. The reason why I'm saying this because we in Renegades and 100.
Dude, every event this year he's just like plus 40. Like he's so consistent. He hasn't had an event like he's had the last event he had a sub 1.0 KD was Dallas last year.
I just like the way Kassad he just does the Jedi mind trick. No, he didn't. That's not. What you just said's incorrect, Larry.
It's so consistent.
I love it.
The thing is like listen. The thing is like some of the spots are reserved for this year, for the next. Like he cannot do it. Like he can't do it. The reason to do it, he's not consistent enough. Is that better? He's not consistent enough. And then, like I said, in Renegades 100 we used to call him even back then after, especially 2021. He's like 3 months on, 3 months off, 3 months on, 3 months off. And maybe it's not his fault. Maybe it's the fault of the team. Whatever. He needs to make the move that Rob's made. He needs to go to elite team, right? Unless I don't think Maus is going to become an elite team this year. Maybe not even next. They have a young core, that's fine. But the thing is, like, are they going to become an elite team? No, not yet. So, in order for him to kind of justify what you said and maybe make it real, he needs to go to team like G2, team like flameZ, like take some of this. Maybe even instead of Patsy, he goes to Liquid. Some of the valid.
That'd be sick.
Some of the valid like changes, because I don't think in Maus he can do it. Obviously, Maus is not the blast partner as well. We know that's going to be till the 2025, so that's going to be another problem. He's not going to play enough events, and I just don't see it in this environment for him. I see the talent. I know what you're talking about. The talent is there to be like the top rifler, not like the top 3, but like up there, right, in the top 10 category, in the top 10 conversation. Top 3 is just not possible, at least not or this year or the next one, especially not this year, because we have so many. Just take a look at Cloud9's lineup. Are you insane? Like, just look at the firepower on that lineup. Look at G2. Look at flameZ. All these teams, and you want to sneak randomly Frozen into that mix? Not gonna happen, brother. Not gonna happen.
To be fair, it is a hot take, sure. But obviously the hot take here is like, look, I think we can all agree he has the potential, but the hot take is that he will do it. Because I agree with Kassad. Like, first of all, I'm not even going to do the whole angle of like he's not in a good enough team. Like, spoiler, that is obviously one thing that on the HLTV will absolutely kill you dead. You just got no chance whatsoever of getting all the way up there if you're on Maus. But it's worse than that. Because as he said, like, if you just look at the names, like, here's the big problem. Like he said, the first 3 out the gate are already better right now. Right now, that's my problem. Is really, for this hot take to work, Maui, you have to already think he's better than one of these 3, NiKo, Axel, and Robs. If you don't, then why wouldn't they be the best this year? You know what I mean?
I think Robs has been not as good this year.
That's amazing. I actually think the idea... I thought... Kassad, did I not try to call him on this last year, but he tried to wiggle out of it. He just, let's be real, just put your cards on the table. You just think for years now that Frozen is better than Robs. Just say it if you think it.
Frozen is a more impactful...
He did it last year. He did it.
Frozen has been a more impactful player for my money. That's why, like, I mean, I had the biggest hate boner for Robs in 2020, 21, when Robs knew that he was going to be joining flameZ and he was just stat padding for the hell of it. But now, this year, actually, once Robs has to, like, do a little bit more, you could see his numbers have dropped off. like for the year, like Rops is at a 1.15, Frozen's at a 1.22. Like it's a pretty significant difference there. Obviously, like Frozen isn't making it
What a
deep
mad
into some of
take,
these.
okay.
Frozen's not making it as deep into some of these events, but even against top 20 opponents, Frozen is 1.22, Rops is 1.15, because Rops now finally has to like get his shit together and not bait viciously. And so I think that like Frozen, like actually,
why did he do that number, Kassad? Isn't that weird? Because I know on HLTV it goes top 5, top 10, and he just went to top 20. It's weird that.
Exactly.
Spoiler: I don't give a fuck how much Frozen.
Okay.
Frozen
Top 10,
farms the
top 10,
20th.
top 10,
Come on.
Top 10, 1.2 for Frozen.
And how many?
1.14
What's the
for
sample
Rops.
size? What's the sample size?
23 maps for Frozen, 57 for Rops. Because
just double. So what you're saying is a player that
23
played
maps is a lot of maps.
He
23 maps
played twice as many maps against the best players. And by the way, here's the other thing about top 10. Frozen's doing it against the 9th team there. Rops is doing it against 1, 2, 3. He's in the semis. He's in playoffs of major. Mate, that's such a whack rated on stats. Like, look, if you're going to go, don't use stats. Just use, if you think he's a better player, use the angle that you want to see.
Impactful
Stats
wise,
don't work on that one. Come on.
As he's saying this, I'm literally looking on the fucking other screen, and Mouse is about to play a team called Stumpy.
But no one's using those stats. I'm using always like at least top 30 filter at bare minimum.
So anyway, the good news here is I have outed Maui into actually admitting he thinks that Frozen is better now than Rops, who's winning all the like MVP. If people didn't see, like, I thought Rops was like unbelievable the last few months. Like even in you go looking like Dallas, was it his fault they lost to Wentz? Was it? Fuck, I think he had like one of the best fucking tournament runs of ages. Another amazing masterclass rifler. But then here's the other problem you've got. You've done the classic move that everyone does when they're hopeful about someone. You give your player all the potential in the world to improve, but no one else gets any potential, right? I'll give you a problem you've got right now, Maui. It's not even just those three. Those three, like I'm with Kassad, they've already got their spots reserved. Frozen has to outperform them, but it's worse because while he's trying to outperform them, I'll just give you 2 other names. How about kassad and Stown? kassad ever gets a good enough team around him, and if Stown, by the way, ever does the device move and just overcomes that issue, they're right there too. There's 5 names I've got there, bro. So it's not like it can't happen, but if I'm doing these 5 and I add in Frozen, he's not at the front of my list. He's not going to be in the top 3 for me. So I think it's a good hot take. I just don't agree.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think I've said most of my piece on this one. I think like in terms of like, I think the one thing that's worrying about kassad is that he did really badly by his standards at the most recent event. And
but kassad is carrying fucking playoff series at majors, my dude. Your guy Frozen is playing the 9th best team in the world in a group stage so that you can get your top 10 stat filter wank off. There you go. There you go.
Top 4, had the same placing at the Rio Major as kassad did.
And how did he do against shitty outsiders? Yeah, exactly.
Listen,
exactly.
When it comes to kassad, there are 2 things, right? Kassad, first of all, I think he had some sort of a tragedy recently.
Did he? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. His father passed away. Yeah, so like you just hope it doesn't trend because of that.
Really quietly. So
yeah.
Oh right, I never heard anything about. Fair enough.
So I'm not sure 100%, but yeah, that's what people have told me. The other thing is they still have Art and Gary there, right? Who are clashing with Fallen's ideas, I think, at least. And until you sort that one out, you can't really move on because, you're bringing another CEO and not firing the last one. I think we talked about this, right? So it's just, I think until they sort this thing out, kassad won't be able to perform well because it does spill down to the players when there's like 2 currents, like 2 like rivers flowing into different directions. It affects players because they don't really know what the right path is and make more mistakes and affects their performance and all this shit that's happening, right? So kassad is definitely up there when it comes to these rifles conversations, top rifles right now. Frozen, yes, he has the talent, but I don't think he's there because many things like that we already mentioned. So it's a very bold prediction. It is a hot take. It's a bold prediction, but I don't see it coming true at all.
All right, here's my hot take. I've figured it out. I've been thinking about the whole episode. Can I do it? Can I frame it this way? I'm going to do it. This is for kassad, but it's true. It's actually my take for real. If you actually put all context into play, and especially if you know that I do value your general body of work more than even winning championships. Like essentially, I would just give the obvious examples like this. There's people who've won majors who were just good for 6 months. I care more if you were like, if every day, even if not always at the major, you were like the best player every day. I think that's way bigger. I actually think if I look at all factors considered, I actually think NiKo is the second best CSGO player of all time. I think I would say that. I think he's second best.
Oh, the thing is, like, it's so hard for me to say to give him the second place. But I see where you're coming.
It's because if you're going to go with championship, you have to give it a device or something, don't you? You know what I mean? But like,
and
if I just look at, if I take aside team concepts when they did it, like if I just watched all the games with the nameplates off, only Simple played better than NiKo in my opinion. Like,
yes,
it's too many years is my problem. It's too many years of being like that insanely good. Because like I said, basically what I didn't say earlier that I could have also done as a hot take is, bro, when I watched that Cologne final, this is why NiKo's an alien, dude. I think now might be the best he was ever playing. Like he looks like now his game's mastered. Think about all the other great players. Like Cold Zero was still good after his best years, but he was just like a bit better. You know, he was 80% as good. NiKo might be in his prime now in 2023. Like, bear in mind the game's about to end. I think he might be second best for me. I know it's a hot take, but it's a hot take, sure. There you go.
Listen, the best I can give you is that he's equal to Simple. You know,
that's even better. That's even better.
No, the best I can give him, right? Because I can't agree.
There you go.
That he's.
That's the weirdest Porn Stars episode ever, isn't it, Maui? I'm like, I want him to be second best ever. Best I can do is equal with the GOAT. It's like, what? What sort of mad trade is this? I know.
The best I can do for you is, you know, just giving him the equally sharing the number one.
Right,
spot.
okay.
Because like if this year continues to be like this, and you know, in transition to CS stuff, but we don't know. The thing is, like, he delivered so much impact, so much more impact than Simple, I believe, in his teams. Yes, Simple has the craziest numbers of all time. It's just fucking amazing. He's an alien by himself, right? But he did play with an AWP for many of the
Put it this way,
years,
to
right?
me, the angle you're going with here is more like, to you, he's more well-rounded than Simple, right?
Exactly, more complete player,
Yes,
right
okay.
now. More complete player. Definitely the equally skilled in terms of sealing, in terms of like clutching and all these things that are even with the, I can't compare him with like with an AWP as Simple, but she can use an AWP, right? We saw that in the past. So the best I can actually give you is equal to Simple. So Simple NiKo number one, and then you can put device number two, and you know, whoever is, you know, behind.
NiKo can't op. Like, let's get that clear. We saw that at the beginning of 2022. That was bad. That was hurting me because I was like, oh, they should just keep Mauisnake on the op.
He can't op like Simple, yes. But
he can't op like Mauisnake. He can't even op like Mauisnake.
He can
Come
op.
on,
It's just
Mauisnake
not
was
as
the
good.
worst
Yeah, he can
C-side
op.
opper we had. Like,
can op.
Mauisnake was only good on the CT side. He was decent on CT side op. But everything else, he wasn't even touching the op on T side. NiKo can op better than Mauisnake, that's for sure, but he cannot op better than Simple. But can Simple rifle as good as NiKo?
No, of course not. No. NiKo, hands down, best rifler. Like, that's not a question for me at all. But I just had to draw issue with that
good.
single point.
Okay.
Is that it?
I mean,
that might be the end, right? Is that it?
he didn't really like elaborate too much on it.
Well, I mean, okay.
doesn't agree.
Okay. For the argument there, for the bigger argument or the point that Thorin made that he's the second best, I think that like there's a couple, like the way that you would say he's the best, as you mentioned earlier, Thorin, is like pound for pound, like econ wise, NiKo's the best. You give him a Deagle, he's going to get the most done with it. You give him an AK, he's going to get the most done, and or M4 on the CT side, of course. But like where I put Device is my number two. Device is definitely my number two player of all time.
Okay.
It does involve, I mean, his stats will end up being better because he's using an op prop, like just kind of how this game works most of the time, unless you're bad. And the thing is that with NiKo, like it's like there was this period where he was performing really well for like as an individual, but like he wasn't having any like deep like he wasn't going like deep enough in tournaments for me. I guess that was kind of around the online era, though. It felt like he was just sort of irrelevant for a period there. So I guess that's not the most damning part of this. But like, I'm just not gonna like memory wipe what Device did with Astralis and how hard he was carrying their asses. He wasn't carrying their asses like single-handedly. Obviously, they were the best team ever, but like he was the best player on the best team for a stretch of like 2.5 years.
If you look at the numbers, yes. If you look at the impact, the most scary players of that team of Astralis, the most annoying and impactful players were Ziptix and Glaive. Yes, Device is the overall best player, but when it comes to like the stats and all this shit, right? But Ziptix and Glaive are the super carry players in that team. But the thing is, like, if you can mention the NiKo's pre-COVID online whatever era, why don't you mention the Devices like break of a fucking year and something, and then coming back to Astralis and not doing anything for 6 months, and then in the NIP episode and the moment where the prime Astralis kind of dropped off, like that's a big period of time.
A couple of years,
like,
yeah.
But NiKo has been delivering consistently since 2015.
I'll tell you a banger line, because this line looks, if you go look, this checks out. Right, NiKo's stats are so good that you wouldn't know he was a rifler if you actually just looked at the raw numbers. Like, he has the numbers of the greatest. Like, the joke is, if you just converted his numbers directly and said it was an AWPer, the AWPer himself would instantly be like a top 5 GOAT contender player of all time. Like that's it. I think actually NiKo on every level, in my opinion, the only thing he hasn't done is win everything. That's it. And by the way, spoiler, he's now won Katowice and Cologne. So we're doing the same simple thing again, where if you win the major last, people don't realise you sort of got there, and they think, oh, people are going to act, the day he wins the major, people will act like he got twice as good. Obviously, he didn't. He got 0.01% better. You know what I mean?
I think, yeah, exactly. I think that, NiKo and Simple is the classic Ronaldo Messi type of situation.
Yes.
And I don't know who would I name as fucking...
No, I know what you mean. Your analogy is like, in this analogy, you're making like NiKo Messi, because the angle is that he does more for the team, whereas Ronaldo is like, he only scores, but that is the most important part of the game. So that's why it's a classic debate, isn't it?
Actually, I would say the other ways. Like, okay. I think Ronaldo is the one that's doing all for the team. And Messi is the one that's like, getting the passes from Xavi and Iniesta and other people.
I see the analogy. Okay.
Yeah, so that's how I see it, right? So for me, like I said, I can't really put him as number one firmly, simply because the presence of Simple is there. But I can put him as number 2 because that's what he does on the server with a rifle, nonetheless, for past 8 years. So that's the issue.
Yeah, there you go. There's the hot take. And by the way, that is a hot tip, because if you essentially don't know, every single sports ball show ever values rings number 1, so they'll never have this discussion, will they? But there you go. Oh, and by the way, obviously, if you like sports ball, you'll be able to, by the time this comes out, watch me and Maui's second episode of our show, Banter Give and Go, about the NBA, over on the LFN Sports Channel. Go and check that out and subscribe there. Hot Take Point Made is brought to you, as always, by eSportsBet, the industry's leading crypto odds matrix. If you've never deposited crypto onto their website before, they offer their classic first-time deposit bonus of 50% up to 100 USDT. And if you don't have any crypto, but you want to get having some fun and playing, you can actually also get some ESC, which is the new rebranded name for DJT, their own token on the website. And the way you can get some for a limited time only is through the following promotion. You can join the eSportsBet Discord, discord.gg/esportsbet, and you can get 10,000 DSC for doing so. You can follow eSportsBet on Twitter @eSportsBet for 5,000 DSC, and you can follow eSportsBet.io on Instagram for 5,000 DSC also. If you do any of those things, then go to either the mod mail on the eSportsBet Discord or customer support on the website. Tell them you did these things. They will credit your account, but hurry up. This is for a limited time only, and when you have ESC, you can make bets and predictions, and you can also eventually convert to USDT. Check out eSportsBet.io for more information.